May I have your attention, please?
After researching Equinox, I discovered something fascinating. Apparently, she only has one good meta build. But what if we completely ignored the meta and build Equinox the way she was actually designed to be played? Weapon buffs, infinite shields, form swapping, occasional nukes, because obviously, and stealth get.
What are you doing? We don't do that here.
Okay, maybe not that one. Anyways, I presented you True Duality Equinox. Do I have your attention now? Welcome everyone to this Equinox guide, where I will try to pour my limited knowledge directly into your brain so you can enjoy a completely different way of playing this frame. Equinox is a criminally underrated warframe that usually gets reduced to just two builds: Day form Maim nuke or Ninth form shield gating. Both are strong, both can comfortably clear basically every mission type in the game. But Equinox's entire identity is supposed to be duality, so I decided to spend some time researching her kit properly, and what I found honestly surprised me. Because once you stop treating her forms like separate builds and start treating them like parts of the same machine, the frame suddenly starts making way more sense. And trust me, that becomes really important once we get into the actual gameplay loop. The build I will showcase today is a true Duality Equinox, where we will be pressing buttons all day long. Sorry, Revenant players. This build focuses on using everything in Equinox kit, squeezing every stat possible, abusing every tech known to mankind, and somehow turning Equinox into a frame that can actually do everything. Weapon buffs, shield sustain, enemy debuff, damage vulnerability, mobility, nuking, and the funny part is, all those things start feeding into each other once the build gets going. Which sounds great on paper, but the real reason this setup works is something most Equinox builds completely ignore. And you will see exactly what I mean in a second. I will try to explain her abilities as quickly as possible. Her passive is basically a baby version of Equilibrium, 11 times weaker than a max ranked Equilibrium. Let that sink in. Her first ability is Metamorphosis, which lets us switch between day and night forms. Entering a form gives us a temporary buff, more weapon damage and movement speed in day form, or more armor and shields in night form. Her second ability puts enemies to sleep in night form, or speeds them up while increasing their damage vulnerability in day form. The augment Calm and Frenzy spreads the effect to nearby enemies on kill. Her third ability is an aura. In night form it reduces enemy damage, while in day form it increases ability strength. And this is where things start getting really interesting. Because her fourth ability is basically the glue holding the entire build together. In night form, it passively restores shields whenever enemies die, and deactivating it restores a huge amount of shields and health to allies. In day form, the passive deals slash damage to nearby enemies, and deactivating it unleashes the classic Maim nuke. Both versions become stronger depending on how much damage enemies take while the aura is active. You can track the stored damage in the buff bar. Now, normally, changing forms would reset all that stored damage, which would completely kill the flow of this build. But the augment energy transfer fixes that by preserving the accumulated damage when swapping forms. And that single interaction is what allows this build to actually function as a true hybrid setup. This is just a quick summary of the parts relevant to the build, so if you want the full breakdown, definitely check the Warframe wiki. Alright, let's get into the build itself. For Archon shards, I heavily recommend at least 2 casting speed shards, although I'll be honest, I've seriously considered running 3 or even 4 sometimes. The rest are Tofage Equilibrium shards for energy economy. As for Helminth, none. Yep, we're actually using Equinox full kit here. Crazy concept, I know. Now onto the mods. Aura and Exilus are mostly preference, but the core setup itself is honestly not very flexible. What you see here is the most balanced version I've tested so far. I tried more duration, range, more efficiency, but this setup just ended up feeling like the sweet spot every single time. I also prefer shield tanking over shield gating, which is why I'm using prime redirection and expertise, but feel free to adapt that part to your own playstyle. Energy transfer, however, is absolutely mandatory, since we're constantly swapping forms. And this next part is very important for understanding why the build scales as well as it does. Your weapons matter way more than you might think. Since your 4th ability stores damage dealt to enemies, you need weapons that can consistently kill and apply pressure. But because Dayform already gives weapon damage buffs, you can get away with running less raw damage on your builds than usual. One weapon I highly recommend is Rakta Dark Dagger, because of its shield glitching effect against irradiated enemies. This high-range gas electric influence setup gave me the best shield restoration results out of everything I tested. Also, huge shout out to Gleaming Blight for the free viral priming. For focus skills, Zenuric or Madurai are probably your best options. I personally went with Zenuric to make the energy economy even smoother. And finally, for companions, Wyrm is a good candidate due to its precept negate. This one helps cleansing status effects. And I forgot I don't even have the mod. But even without it, this setup performed really well as both a primer and shield support companion. This Tazikor setup with radiation, viral, magnetic and electricity helps a lot more than I expected. Now, for some tips and tricks I learned while testing the build. Your 3rd ability gets deactivated whenever you switch forms, so always remember to recast it before doing anything else. Likewise, when you deactivate your 4th ability for the nuke or shield restore, you must activate it again immediately to start storing damage once more. These two habits are basically the core of the entire gameplay loop, and once that muscle memory clicks, the build starts feeling completely different. Rakta Dark Dagger only restores shield while you still have shields remaining, so if your shields fully break, immediately switch to Night Form to regenerate some, or if you're already in Night Form, deactivate your 4th ability for the full shield restore. Also, your 4th ability stores damage dealt inside its radius, so try staying close to your hard-hitting teammates whenever possible. Not only will your nuke scale faster, but your allies also benefit from your buffs at the same time. When rotating into another room, switch into day form for the movement speed boost. And finally, since Equinox has a channeled ability and can gain armor or movement speed buffs, some of those weird incarnate evolutions suddenly become way more easier to activate than expected. Alright, so we've reached the end of the video. Time to conclude. Equinox popularity is in a really weird spot right now. Some quote-unquote mains passionately recommend the classic Maim nuke setup, while the apparently real mains, all 4 of them, swear hybrid builds like these are where the frame's true power actually is. And honestly, after playing this setup, I kinda get it. Why lock yourself into a hyper-specialized build that only abuses Maim, when you can have buffs, shield sustain, damage vulnerability, mobility, crowd control, and still nuke with Maim anyway? And the craziest part is that this gets amplified even more once you start adding augments into the mix. Overall, Equinox is insanely strong, flexible, and most importantly, fun to play. I had literally never played Equinox before making this video, and may the gods strike me down with infinite wrath if I'm lying, but this might genuinely be one of the most interesting Warframes in the entire game. So, Do I recommend Equinox? Absolutely. Nothing else to declare, Your Highness. And that's it for today's video. Hope you enjoyed it, share it with your fellow Tenno, and I will see you next time. Peace!